In the mid-80s, America was obsessed with space. NASA was at its peak, shuttle launches were national events, and kids dreamed of becoming astronauts. And in 1986, one movie tried to capture that dream, a film filled with hope, ambition, and adventure. That movie was SpaceCamp, but instead of reaching for the stars, it came crashing down before liftoff. Hey everyone, welcome back to StarBuzz Entertainment. Today, we're breaking down all the real flaws that turned SpaceCamp 1986 into one of Hollywood's most painful box office flops. And believe me, some of these flaws, you'll feel them too. Because they're not just about filmmaking, they're about decisions, timing, and emotion. So stay with me as we go through flaw number 1 to 10. And don't skip the end, because the last two are the real reasons this film lost nearly 80% of its box office potential. Let's get into it. Or flaw number 1, the wrong timing. Let's start with the most tragic one. Only months before SpaceCamp hit theaters, the world witnessed the Challenger space shuttle disaster. It was a national heartbreak. Schools stopped, news channels replayed it for days, and America's fascination with space turned into grief. And then, not long after, a film came out about kids being accidentally launched into space. It wasn't the movie's fault. It had been filmed before the disaster, but the release timing couldn't have been worse. Audiences just weren't ready to smile about space again. What was meant to be inspiring suddenly felt inappropriate and painful. Flaw number 2, a weak, confused script on paper. SpaceCamp sounded amazing. Young dreamers at NASA, a sudden real launch, survival, teamwork, and hope. But the script was all over the place. The tone shifted constantly. One moment it felt like a teen comedy, the next like a serious survival drama, and sometimes even like a NASA promotional film. The writing never decided what it wanted to be. The dialogue tried to sound scientific, but ended up awkward. Scenes that could have been emotional or suspenseful were rushed or handled like afterthoughts. In the end, the story lacked direction, rhythm, and depth, the kind of emotional pull that keeps viewers hooked. Flaw number 3, unrealistic science. Even in 1986, audiences weren't naive. They loved fantasy, but they wanted logic too, and SpaceCamp ignored both. The idea of teenagers accidentally being launched into orbit was already stretching it, but the movie pushed it even further. These kids suddenly understood shuttle controls, fixed complex systems, and survived space conditions like professionals. It might have worked as a cartoon or a pure fantasy film, but not in a movie that used real NASA equipment and branding. Even NASA engineers later said, "We loved the exposure, but the science made us cringe." Flaw number 4, uneven acting. The cast wasn't bad, it was the direction that failed them. Kate Capshaw did her best as Andy, the tough yet caring instructor. Leah Thompson gave her usual charm, but most of the young actors, including a teenage Joaquin Phoenix, then known as Leaf Phoenix, felt awkward and unsure. Their emotions didn't land, and their chemistry didn't connect. Moments that should have been thrilling or heartbreaking came across as flat or forced. It wasn't their fault, they were talented. But with a tighter script and better direction, they could have shined. Flaw number 5, poor dialogue and flat emotions. One of the hardest things to ignore in SpaceCamp is the dialogue. It often sounds robotic, as if the characters are reading lines from a space manual instead of living real moments. You never feel their fear, joy, or wonder. When a group of teenagers is floating in zero gravity, that's supposed to be magical. But here it feels routine. Even during high-tension moments, the words don't carry emotion. Great visuals mean nothing if the words don't make you feel what's at stake. Flaw number 6, choppy editing and offbeat. Pacing editing can make or break a film, and in SpaceCamp, it broke it. The pacing felt uneven from the start. The first half dragged with slow camp scenes, endless setup and awkward teen banter. Then suddenly, everything sped up once they're in space, as if the editors realized they were running out of time. Some scenes cut off too early. Transitions were abrupt. And emotional beats didn't land. You never get time to process what's happening, and that makes the whole experience feel disconnected. Flaw number 7, tonal confusion. Here's where SpaceCamp really lost its identity. Was it a family adventure? A drama about survival? A sci-fi thriller? No one could tell, not even the filmmakers, it seems. A good movie keeps its emotional tone consistent. E.T. stayed warm and emotional. Apollo 13 stayed grounded and intense, but SpaceCamp jumped between goofy and serious, so often that it felt like watching two different movies stitched together. That tonal confusion kept audiences from taking it seriously. Flaw number 8, bad marketing and poor positioning. Marketing matters. And here, it completely missed the mark. The studio promoted SpaceCamp as a cheerful kids' adventure with smiling faces, bright posters, and fun taglines. But the movie itself was darker and more serious than that. Families expecting a feel-good film left disappointed, while older audiences never even gave it a chance. In short, the studio didn't know who the movie was for: kids, teens, or adults, and that confusion showed at the box office. Flaw number 9, emotional disconnect. Now we reach the heart of the problem, the flaw that caused nearly 80% of the failure. SpaceCamp had the dream, but not the heart. The characters never felt real enough for viewers to care about them. You watched them on screen, but you didn't feel their fear, their struggle, or their triumph, even when they were stranded in space. It didn't hit emotionally. Movies like The Goonies or Stand By Me made you root for every character. But SpaceCamp never reached that emotional connection. Without that bond, audiences walked out indifferent. And indifference kills a movie faster than bad reviews. Flaw, pretend, the post-tragedy. Sensitivity gap, the final and most devastating flaw wasn't creative. It was emotional timing. After the Challenger disaster, the world wanted healing, hope, and respect. But SpaceCamp arrived too soon, with scenes of a shuttle launch gone wrong and kids struggling to survive in space. For many viewers, it felt like reopening a wound. It wasn't the filmmakers' intention, but that sensitivity gap between what people needed and what the movie offered sealed its fate. This emotional mismatch was the final hit that turned SpaceCamp from a dream project into a forgotten disappointment. In the end, SpaceCamp didn't fail because it was a bad idea. It failed because it was released at the wrong time, told in the wrong tone, and aimed at the wrong audience. It tried to inspire, but forgot to connect. It wanted to teach, but forgot to entertain. And most of all, it wanted to celebrate space, but ended up reminding people of tragedy. Today, it lives on as a cult favorite for 80s nostalgia lovers and space movie collectors. It's not remembered for its success, but for its potential, a symbol of how a great dream can still fall short. Sometimes, even the biggest dreams don't make it past the launch pad. SpaceCamp 1986 reached for the stars, but in the end, it taught Hollywood a hard truth. No matter how big the budget or how bright the dream, timing, emotion, and connection are what truly make a movie fly.